Alright, so review. We're going to do 1 through 10 in this video. Number 1, the graph of an equation is given on the right. Which of the following is true? By the way, let me just back up a second. Your final is 50 multiple choice questions. Your review is 50 multiple choice questions. I'm betting they're going to look a lot alike. That's just my thought, though. So, again, we'll go through all of them by the end of today. You won't be here for all of them, but they'll be posted later for your enjoyment. Number 1, the graph of an equation is given on the right. Which of the following is true? The graph has x-axis symmetry. Okay, there's the x-axis. If I fold my graph on the x-axis, does it copy onto itself? No. So that's a no. The graph has y-axis symmetry. If I fold it on the y-axis, will it copy onto itself? Yeah. And again, like this is where you can like literally try to like fold the paper over and visualize it. Yeah, that's true. Origin symmetry. This is one that people struggle with the most, I think. What does origin symmetry mean? Lots of. This is x-axis symmetry. This is y-axis symmetry. So it's either if you either flip it twice or you rotate it 180 degrees. Now rotating is not hard, but remembering what it looked like the old one versus the new one. So if I rotate it 180 degrees, is that the same picture that I had before I rotated? No, because it used to look, right, this was like a downward heart. That one's like an upside down heart. So no to the rotation, so 1 only. Y-axis symmetry. Number 2, the difference quotient can be written as, okay, algebra for the difference quotient. Man, calculus students still struggle with this. F of x plus h. That means you take the f function, and wherever there's an x, you plug in x plus h. So you don't just go 5x squared minus 3 and stick a plus h on the end. It means wherever there's an x, you put in x plus h and leave everything else the same. So replace x with x plus h. And then if I FOIL that and distribute the 5, that's a lot to do in one, but 5x squared plus 10xh plus 5h squared minus 3. That's f of x plus h. So now I have this piece I can plug in. I'm going to have to do the rest of the work on a separate piece of paper here. So f of x plus h, 5x squared plus 10xh plus 5h squared minus 3 minus f of x they just told us was 5x squared minus 3 all over h. In my mind, problems like this are not hard problems, but you do have to be careful. You got to be neat, and you got to know a little bit of algebra. All right, let's distribute the minus sign, and the 5x squareds will cancel. Minus 3 plus 3 will cancel. And so that leaves me with 10xh plus 5h squared all over h. H will divide out from each of those, so 10x plus 5h, which is answer choice C. Being able to do that is super important for calculus. So we'll review that all year long, because that's basic algebra you should be able to do, especially if we give you the formula. And all you got to do is plug in pieces to the right spot.
Is difference quotient like the actual original video still in Schoology?
Probably somewhere.
Alright.
Yeah. Way back in Unit 1 or wherever. Number 3. The function formed by starting with the square root parent function. Oh, this should be an easy one. We're usually pretty good at this. 4 units right. So how do I accomplish 4 units right? What variable changes? Well, right is it's left and right, so it's x. So it needs to be inside there with x, and it's x minus 4. So I don't know about that negative sign. We'll see about that. But so x minus 4, 2 units down, so minus 2 at the end, and reflecting it across the x-axis. So if we reflect it across the x-axis, that's a change in y. So the negative sign doesn't need to be on the x, it needs to be out front to flip the whole thing over. So that would be answer choice D. Number 4, inverse. What's inverse mean? Do you remember how to find inverses? Switch x and y, and then solve for y. So x equals 3 minus y cubed over 2. So that is the inverse, but I've got to solve for y. So I think I would multiply through by 2 to get rid of the fraction. So 2x equals 6 minus y cubed. And then I need to solve for y. So y cubed equals 6 minus 2x. Add the y cubed over, subtract the 2x over. And then cube root the whole thing. So the cube root of 6 minus 2x. And that f to the negative 1, that's just the symbol for inverse. Number 5, the average rate of change. You remember first 9 weeks? That was on like the first test, and then it was a bonus for like the next 3 tests. And some of you got it every time, and others of you missed it every time. Do you remember what the average rate of change is?
Slope.
It's slope. That's all it is the slope. It's just fancy talk for y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Super important for calculus. Calculus could have that same question on their final. What's the average rate of change? So I have x2 and x1, or x1 and x2. So I need f of 1. That would be 4. And I need f of 4. 16 minus 5 would be 11. So y2 minus y1 would be 11 minus 4. x2 minus x1. Again, the order doesn't really matter as long as the order is the same, the top and the bottom. So if I'm doing 11 minus 4, then I need to do 4 minus 1 in the bottom. So 7/3. Again, not really hard to do, but average rate of change, fancy word for slope. Number 6, a piecewise defined function. Remember, we use the second column first. The second column is sort of the if column, and the first column is the then column, so it's a little bit backwards. If x is less than 0, then use this formula. If x is greater than or equal to 0, then use this formula. The mistake people make is plug it into both and then try to make some decision, but you only plug it into one. So g of 0, well, because of the equal to part, we'll plug it into equation B. And 0 times negative 7 plus 8 is 8. So that one's false. G of 2. Let's see, 2 is greater than 0. So plug it into B again. I don't know what this is going to be, but there's no square root that's going to show up. So that's out. G of 1. 1's bigger than 0, so again we'll be in part B. And same thing, there's no square roots that are in part B, so that can't be right. And then lastly, this one better be right because we're out of options here. G of negative 5, well, negative 5 is less than 0, so this one's in part A. 2 square root 4 minus negative 5. 2 square root of 9, 2 times 3 is 6. So yep, that one's B. That one's right. Again, use the x value first to figure out which equation to use. Number 7, the function formed by starting with the cubic parent function. Oh, this is another one. We like these. Reflecting it over the x-axis, so that's a negative in front. Translating it 6 units right, so that's x minus 6. And 5 units down, minus 5 at the end. So there should be something that looks like that. Negative x minus 6 cubed minus 5. You like those. You want those because you're pretty good at those. Number 8. Which equation best represents the graph given on the right? Okay, so it looks like absolute value. They all got absolute value. The vertex is right 3, down 1. So that should be x minus 3 and then minus 1. So those x plus 3's are out. Because right 3 would be x minus 3. Down 1, minus 1. So we're down to B and D. It's flipped over, so it's negative. But they both have that. So now my question is, what's the slope of this thing? Does it have a slope of 2 or does it have a slope of 1/2? 1/2, because it's, or I guess negative 1/2 on this side of it. Down 1 over 2, down 1 over 2, and so on. So the answer is D. Number 9, the zeros of the function. That means you set it equal to 0 to get the zeros. We can factor out an x, and then we can factor what's left. So we get x equals 0, x equals 3, x equals negative 2. Hope that's an answer choice. You can see what happened on C. I think they factored out the x and then forgot that an x out there does give you a solution of 0. And then I guess they factored wrong between A and B, but we want x equals 3 and negative 2. So B. Number 10, the graph of g of x is shown on the right. Which of the following is true? Okay, decreasing. Remember, you read a graph like you read a book from left to right. So decreasing means as I go left to right, it's going down. So from negative infinity to 0, these are x values. So as I move from negative infinity to 0, is that graph decreasing? No, the graph is increasing, so not A. G is increasing from 0 to 2. So from x equals 0 to x equals 2. would be right there. That is not increasing, that is decreasing. G has a relative max when x equals 2. Well, there's x equals 2. Is that a relative max? No, that is a relative min. So that one's out. G has a relative min when x equals 0. X equals 0. That's a relative max, so it's not. It better be E because that's the only one I have left. Increasing from 2 to infinity. X equals 2 to infinity would be that right there. That is increasing. So it's answer choice E.